Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for the inaugural executive discussion series from Emotiv Mobility. Our goal with this series is simple: bring together leaders from across manufacturing to have practical conversations around the challenges shaping our industry. Lean has been one of the most influencing operational philosophies in manufacturing for decades. Yet today's operating environment looks very different than it did 5, 10, 15 years ago. The workforce has changed, supply chain variability, cost pressures, information overload. Our objective today isn't to discuss or determine whether Lean works, but the more interesting question is, what's changed and how are leaders adapting? So with that, allow me to introduce you to our panelists for our discussion today. Abby, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hey, thanks, Todd. Just good afternoon, everyone. And just a great deal of pleasure to be a part of this panel, to come on and to talk about a journey that I've been a part of for about 18 years in my career. And my journey started back in Stryker Orthopedics in 2007, and then grew into Danaher. And then since Danaher, I've been not just living out the Lean culture, but helping companies transform their culture into Lean. So great deal of discussions to be had. I've worked in the cosmetic industry, I've worked in the medical industry, and I've worked in industrial. And now I'm finally at automotive. So Emotiv is a company I've been a part of for the last year and a half. Company that is with a bold future and into what the future of automation will look like while still branching out into other aspects, and then using Lean to help us navigate and build a structure that's going to handle the growth that we have aspired to grow. So excited to be a part of this discussion. Had a great deal of experience, but also a desire to learn from the other two folks on the panel, and then the questions that we're going to encounter as we go through. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Hobby. My name is Ryan Liziak, and I lead the operations practice for a company by the name of Lean Focus. Lean Focus is a group of former executives who have learned and practiced Lean and led implementations of their own, and are now coaches and teachers for those who are learning it themselves. We are not lifelong consultants, but rather folks that have made mistakes and learned along the way, had the luxury of good coaching for the organizations we work for, and now are able to share that perspective with other clients. So my background is 20 years in Lean, starting at Danaher, applied Lean at Waste Management, and then ultimately as Vice President General Manager of a few manufacturing companies. So hopefully I can bring this broad perspective for companies that I've worked at, but also companies that I've coached with, and really looking forward, as Abby said, to today's discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to our final panelist, Mary.
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Mary Buchseiger, and I'm the president and CEO of Lucerne International. And we're a contract manufacturer, global contract manufacturer. And our core products are forged, cast, and machined components, as well as president and CEO of our new division, Lucerne Global Solutions, where we provide warehousing, foreign trade zone, which is very pertinent in today's world, and fulfillment. So I've been in the automotive industry for a long time, close to 30 years now, and I've really worked through every facet of the organization, all the way from assembling parts on the floor up to the C-suite. So I'm really excited for the conversations we're going to have today, and really looking forward to where this takes us. And with there, I'll turn it back to Todd.
Excellent. Thanks, Mary. And for everyone I haven't met yet, my name is Todd Fairburn, and I lead marketing and brand as well as commercial vehicle for Emotiv Mobility. And what's fascinating to me, as a lot of my past experience has all been on the marketing and brand side, is spending the past year and a half, 2 years, really understanding the manufacturing piece of the business and leveraging the tools that I've learned around Lean into how we attack things from a marketing perspective, from a growth perspective, and beyond. And now the purpose of our discussion today isn't, as I mentioned at the jump, to determine what's best, what works for me, what happens, etc. It's really to kind of open up the eyes of all those on the call or on the webinar and take you through some of the journeys and experiences our team has had. So we have Mary, we have Abby, we have Ryan, who have all had different walks of life. And I'm sure everyone in here has had a very similar story where lean may not, or can possibly support their business moving forward. I would ask if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A session towards the end. And let's kind of move forward with the discussion, shall we? So Mary, let's get started with you because you are the non-lean expert of the group. You've spent a bunch of your time, your professional experience, your career leading manufacturing organizations throughout significant change and turmoil and adjustment in the marketplace. When you look at your operating systems today and the operating environment, where do you still see lean creating value, and why is that?
You know what? I'm glad you gave that intro because I think that I come at this a little different perspective probably than our other panelists, because I don't really look at lean from the production floor first. I actually consider lean in the entire value stream. And I don't consider it when raw material enters the plant or when it leaves the plant. I really start from the supplier side all the way to our customers. Because if we're only optimizing what's happening inside of our four walls, then I really think that we're missing a huge portion of waste that we can cut out. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about lean is that it's just about manufacturing, and it's about so much more than that. For me, lean is about really removing friction or removing anything that doesn't create value at the end of the day. And I think it applies just as much to every department in an organization: finance, sales, customer service, supply chain, all the way down to leadership decision-making at the end of the day. 20 years ago, we focused on excess inventory, excess motion, transportation. And right now, I think, especially now more than ever, information comes at us at such a fast pace. I think with lean, we need to really focus on information overload, duplicate work, searching for information, manual reporting. You can really take lean through any part of the organization. And for me, one of the biggest tools, and I'm sure in many organizations that we're seeing, one of the biggest tools for that transformation is leaning heavy into AI, eliminating repetitive emails, customer communication, all the way through to how do we get AI onto the factory floor and automate more of what we can do.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Mary, because I think a lot of people's first association with lean is on the factory floor. And it absolutely provides value there. And we've seen a lot of return in doing so for our clients and in previous roles. I would say, though, the return is bigger on carpet land, what we call non-factory floor. So what do I mean by that? I mean by your order entry process. I mean your new employee onboarding process. I mean how our books close each month. What's the means by which we're contacting suppliers? Those, if you look at first an organizational wide view, not, as Mary said, just on the factory floor, if you take a value stream order to cash process, those might be the biggest bottlenecks. Those might be areas where they're causing your customer the biggest pain. So those might, and I stress might, be areas you focus on. But I think first it starts with a broad perspective, as Mary said, and then you zero in and you focus on what really matters.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And again, what tools do we have to do that? It's really an exciting landscape right now. And Ryan, I mean, you live and breathe the lean. So you're the one that gets it and helps customers. And I'm sure you're seeing just this explosion, basically, of tools that you can use, because AI isn't just coming in and helping us do things, but AI is helping us create new tools that are now at our fingertips, custom tools that we would have never been able to use before. And it's actually a really exciting time. Whether it's good or bad, we were able to eliminate a couple of positions here just by utilizing AI. And again, yes, it's terrible to eliminate positions, but at the end of the day, when you're trying to run a lean organization and you can put a program in place to do those constant things that, were time consuming and you had to pay somebody there to do. And by the way, they're doing it with minimal, if any, errors where there's no more human interaction. Oh, Abby, I think you're muted.
One thing I like to add, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
Yep. One thing I like to add to what you both have said is when it comes to the lean system, we come at it from a systemic perspective of it's not just we're looking to cut cost. And most companies that have not yielded fruit from lean are the ones that have looked at it from, hey, initiative, year one, we need to reduce cost, versus from a company culture aspect that looks at, Ryan, you said the value stream from the back end to the front end to see where the hiccups, the hangups. And at the end, it's the ability that an organization has to think fast, to solve problems at any venues, and to build the culture behind that can keep doing that. So when complexity change, if you have the system alive, you're solving the newest problem that are coming up. You're not stuck in doing the old things because your data is reflecting something different. And that's where lean is alive.
Yeah, you used a word there that I can't underline more, which is culture. And that's the thing that needs to change, but it's the slowest to change. And so you need to keep that in mind as you're going about the lean journey, that what you're ultimately after is changing the culture, but that's going to be the hardest piece to move. So you need to start building up good behaviors and good activities that are focused on the critical few, starting first by taking the value stream analysis, as we talked about before, but then narrow in on what needs to happen and how you're going to make that better. And on the subject of AI, Mary, I couldn't agree more, but AI should help you focus more, help with the data analysis. Abby and I were talking earlier about the importance of data to drive your decisions. And AI absolutely helps make that more efficient. There are some security reasons, obviously, that you need to make sure what you're putting out on AI and how you're doing it. But there is an absolute benefit to helping to drive decisions in a more timely manner and focus your attention and focus your precious calories as an organization on the right things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that I don't think AI is about replacing lean or replacing positions. I just think it's one of the most powerful tools that we can have to help us along at the end of the day. Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you guys there. We talked a little bit about lean, where it creates value, how it creates value, some of the challenges in today's ever evolving world. Shoot, we even talked a little bit about AI as well. And, Ryan, I want to start with you, but definitely Mary and Abby, your experiences too. I'd love to kind of explore from your professional experiences where complexity begins to change the rule, right? We have complexity in today's environment. But Ryan, specifically, we can start with you on this one. You've worked alongside manufacturers across a plethora of different industries. You've had different experiences yourself. At what point does complexity, as well as technologies, really create and begin to expose the traditional limits of how people think of lean principally today?
Yeah. Great question. Lean has always been about identifying and focusing on waste, right? I think, though, where it starts to break down is when we lose that focus on the critical few. So you got to do something called a Pareto, which for those that aren't familiar, that's the 20% of items that drive 80% of the issue, because that's where you want to spend your calories. Those are the things that you want to drive organizational focus and tackle those hills first. You don't want to get stuck trying to figure out how to solve every single problem, because that's where things will break down, is when things get out of control and things start to lose focus. But I see really three main drivers for when lean breaks down, and usually an organization has one or many of these as they begin to fall. The first one is waning involvement of leadership. That's always number one. Leadership has got to recognize that a lean initiative does not just run on autopilot. You can't just set it up and then assume that it's going to go on forever. You also can't outsource it. You know, our culture, I think, is getting even more used to the idea of someone else will take care of this for me. So we'll bring in lean focus and they'll make our company lean. It doesn't work that way. It's also not a quick fix. People have this idea, leadership will think, okay, it'll take a month or a quarter or maybe a year. And what we found is it's a lifelong journey. The benefits will start showing almost immediately. But what you need to realize is that the real cultural change is what you're after, and that's going to take some time. Second thing that I see is lack of engaging people. That I think is extremely important. Where organizations fail with their lean transformation and it starts to break down is if they've got an elite team of belt-wielding individuals who are really smart and they go around and they solve problems. That helps, but the operator is king. Whoever is within what we call Gemba, whoever is actually doing the work every day, that person needs to be not just engaged, but involved in the change, because without them, you get no sustainment. So that's really the second thing. And then the third thing, and this is kind of a product of 1 and 2, is a lack of focus. If everybody gets so excited and wants to do too much and forgets to chew their food, then it gets to where everything is important. And if everything's important, nothing's important. Right. So you need to make sure that you've got a focused set of actions of things you are going to do, not a long list of things you're not going to get done. So usually when I see an organization start to break down, it's from one of those 3 things: leadership involvement, lack of engagement of the people, or lack of focus. Abby or Mary, would you guys agree with that? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues, and kind of ties back to something that you said earlier too, Ryan, is that, you know, as leaders, I think we're becoming more information managers instead of decision makers. We've got so much information coming at us at all times. We're drowning in KPIs and dashboards and emails and meetings, and it's constantly coming at us. And I think that traditional lean assumes a stable process. So it's controlling what we can, right? It's really controlling that input and making sure that you're committed to it and making sure, like you said, that it's communicated throughout the organization. An example of what we do here at Lucerne is that we've always followed the EOS model. I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with that. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it basically starts from the top and gets involvement through our entire organization. So, you know, we choose what projects we work on, what we're going to focus on. We set those goals and we attack them quarterly. It's, you know, how the big thing that we always say here is, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. So we manage those big projects, we break them down into smaller projects, and we attack those quarterly and pay attention to it through a weekly. And we ensure not just buy-in, but involvement and accountability from our organization. That's one of the most important things that you can do to implement any type of new process or procedure, anything that you're trying to do. So that's what's worked for us here.
It starts at the top, Mary. So I mean, great job doing that. And we espouse a similar Hoshin Connery type of model, which is focus on the critical breakthroughs and then deploy those activities throughout your organization and have some means of following up on both the results as well as the activities, whether that be monthly or whether that be quarterly or whether that be daily. You need to have that level of accountability, but it starts with the alignment from the top, right? Because if you don't have that alignment, then you've got a bunch of people running around chasing the next bright, shiny object, and that's never successful. So you absolutely need to have it. And I applaud what you've done, which is to set that direction from the top, because I feel like that's one of the things that is missing sometimes from clients that we see is they want to do so much, but they don't really know what to omit, right? You need to have an idea of what you're not going to do, and so therefore what you're going to focus on, right?
Yeah, what not to do is always a big one. There's so much to do. We actually have an issues list that we call it our parking lot because, when everything's important, nothing is important, like you said, but we don't want to miss those things that we think is important. We just can't do it right now. You can't do everything at once. So we have a parking lot where we review those quarterly and
Yeah.
decide what to pull in. But one other comment on that, I think it's really important too, not just to have buy-in and have it coming from the top down, but one of the things that we feel is really important is that making sure that the critical elements come from the people that touch products every day, the people that deal with the global supply chains and things that we have to change. So really getting into each one of our departments to figure out what's needed, what we can do next, and not just sitting up here, in a boardroom saying, well, what can we change? We want to get into the trenches and find out what we can really change from the people that are doing those jobs every day. How can we make those jobs easier? How can we eliminate waste?
Team selection is so important, Avi. I know you're about to talk, but I think you could touch on that as well. So sorry. You're muted, bud.
No, I'm not. I was going to quote. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think
And
slight delay. But I'm going to quote you Damon Baker, who said, when an organization can't distinguish between noise and a signal, that's when lean is breaking. And for me, what that means is that I think you guys touched on it. When we're measuring 50,000 KPIs, that's noise. When you have the critical 5, 6, 7, those are signals that go red and green. That's where you're focused. And another example to build on that is that even to take it as daily management, because we just came off our Boulder review, which is once a month. We get the leadership team together, and then we go to boulders that are identified, and then we measure this is our target, this is our actual, where we're red. Do we know why we're red? And then what are we doing about it? And in those discussions, when daily management became as a topic, and one of the topic is if daily management is something we're just reporting or figuring out how to report, lean is breaking. Because the power of this most fundamental tool, foundational tool, is when we're able to think quick, solve problem, what works get documented to standard work, what doesn't, we go back to PDCA. When you create that culture at every level, not just in CI level or in the executive level, but every level in the organization, this is when you see lean has a flourishing impact on an organization. And then the last thing is, I think you both touched on it, the leadership aspect. I think if we were building a house, the most important thing would be the foundation. And the foundation of lean would be leadership. Does leadership believe in the metric? Do they believe in the journey? And if they're behind it, lean will grow. Not overnight, but it will grow. It's like a seed you plant and you got to keep watering it. And I think where people on the front line only follow what leadership on top are doing. And this is where, when lean breaks, the facets of noise over signals can't decipher the two.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It comes down to behavior. If you think about lean needs to become a behavior. It needs to be something that you do day in and day out. If it's something that you do once a month or occasionally, but you do your other work normally, then that becomes an exception. It needs to become embedded, as you're talking about, Abby. Otherwise, it won't work. And so, how to have those right behaviors takes some time, right? It takes some coaching. And whether that coaching comes from internal or external, that needs to be there, because this is not a normal thing. You're trying to break their old habits and create new habits. And that's going to take some time, and that's going to take a lot of nudging along the way.
One of my least favorite phrases that I've ever heard is because we've always done it that way. Yeah. We're not allowed to say that because we've always done it that way. No, that's not a good answer anymore.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. I think one of the tough things is figuring out which norms you're going to break and which ones you're going to allow for now, or which ones you're not going to, what battles you're not going to fight, right? Because one of the things that I've experienced in organizations that I've led is if there's too much change, and if there's too much, we can't do it the old way, then the patient starts to reject the organ, right? So you need to keep in mind the change curve that's going on with each of the folks within your organization, and fight the critical battles, and let the ones that aren't going to be as impactful, let them go. And I think that's one of the things that I personally have learned from my own mistakes sometimes in departments and businesses that I've led, is if you insist on too much change fast, then you start to have organizational rejection of lean itself. And so there's a pace at which you need to move at. And that's always the tough thing, is staying in tune to how fast or how slow we need to go.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent. Gosh, when I think about it, the ground that we've covered in this dialogue thus far addresses a number of different things. And Ryan, just to piggyback off of what you said, the change has a dramatic impact. Organizations just can't throw arms and legs at problems. They can't, skinny down or ramp up inventory to, put themselves in a favorable position 30, 60 days from now. And most importantly, you can't just add cost or remove cost to address every challenge in the organization. And oh, by the way, the dynamics of really just working in today's environment have significantly changed over the past 5-6 years, with more remote work, operating from different locations, not physically being in places to your point, Abhi, have daily management or Gemba walks or activities like that. Now, Abhi, I'm going to come right back to you, because in your experience, because I know you are visiting our facilities throughout North America, doing the Gemba walks, going to Gemba, as they say. I should be a astute student there. But how are organizations adapting to these changes, both from a tech to personnel to just wide spans of growth? And what are they doing today, the best organizations, to separate themselves from, their competitors in the space?
Thanks, Todd. So based on, my time at Gemba, when it comes to understanding the complexity of the nature of our organization, not just our own, but the industry. And we see it not just in automotive, but we see it in medical, we see it in technology, industrial. Our market is shifting, and it's requiring us to be a lot more flexible than we've ever been before. I think Mary noted that. But one thing is, growth does not have to equate to increase in process, which in turn increase in complexity. I think the basic underlining of lean is about simplicity. How does growth go with keeping it simple, using the technology that's available today that may not have been around for the last 5 years or even 10 years? How do we implement it into our journey and grow and flex when we needed to flex? And then again, standard work is something that we've used in the layer of lean, I'll say, as a first and foremost layer is, do we have standards where we need to? But now there are things that, hey, maybe this side of the business needs to have a defined standard, and this side needs to have a lot more flexible standards, because there's a lot of change that's happening where previously it's everything needs to be standard approach. So we need to be definitely nimble. And what I've seen in the plants is the transformation and from a traditional manufacturing into lean thinking manufacturing. The whole business it's not easy. It's not overnight. It's a journey that starts at leadership thinking differently, asking questions differently, measuring critical few metrics. It's a leadership journey that starts for the next 3 to 5 years prior to you seeing the fruit of what Toyota has seen in their industry, what many great organizations that have gone on this journey have seen. It's never an overnight thing. It's not flip on the light. It is a commitment that starts and then it withers, whether the market is up or down. You're living lean from a leadership making decision perspective. That's kind of what I add to it. Brian, Mary, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, thanks. I was trying to add myself back onto the
Me
stage.
too.
So thanks. No, a lot of great things you said there, Avi, and I want to underline a couple of them, which is, you need to be patient, but you need to be methodical, right? Take those precious first few innings, if you will, of your lean journey as an opportunity to really make an impact. And so that needs to start with, I think, a good self-assessment of the current state. Where are you today? What are your challenges? What are your strategic objectives? And what's the state of your organization? And then decide where you're going to start based on that, right? So a lot of things you talked about will come as a result of that. If you pick something, in my opinion, early that is not going to have a big impact, then all of a sudden lean can get brushed to the side as not really being that important or not being that impactful. So I think leaders need to make a really intentional early splash, but then as we talked about early, it can't just be about the beginnings. It's gotta sustain. But the critical first few innings, I think, is so important.
Yeah, Avi, you did definitely make a lot of great points. I think from an executive perspective, for me, what I usually ask and what I ask my team isn't what can we improve upon tomorrow. For me, it's what can we stop doing tomorrow. That's really the premise of lean. What can we stop doing? Especially, again, I'm just going to go back to this information overload. We've got an accounting system, an ERP system, and then we've got KPIs and dashboards from customers and suppliers. And it's just all of this information overload. And how do we manage it all? And really, what do we need to pay attention to? Back to your point, Ryan, what is the most important things? What do we actually need to pay attention to that's going to move the needle? And what do we have to drop because we've always done it? We're just going to keep doing it that way. Right?
Yep,
That is
always the hardest part.
That is one of my pet peeves. So I don't really look at lean so much as what can we improve upon. It's what can we stop doing that we just don't need to do anymore.
And I think it takes that messaging from the top, right? You need to hear Mary say that, because if she or he does not say that, then was yesterday's thing important, or what about that thing we were working on a month ago? You need to start off with the what are we going to focus on? What are going to be the big breakthroughs this year? What are the things that we're gonna keep track of, and make sure that we've got a nice cadence in mind to ensure that we're doing those activities.
Yeah, and I think one of the more important things too, as we're especially in automotive, for those of you in the world of automotive that we live in, we are just in such a time of complete transformation and disruption at the end of the day. With automotive, you've got, the crazy regulatory changes, you've got ICE to EV, back to ICE, maybe EV, maybe some hybrid. We don't know what's happening in that world. And all of these changes that are taking place, one of the most important things that I tell my leadership team is that we just have to be agile. We absolutely have to be ready for anything that's coming our way. The old standard way of this is how we do things and it's very rigid just doesn't work for us anymore. I mean, just look at the changing tariffs, where I'm sure if anybody pays any attention to the news that we're constantly blasted with, just yesterday we had a 50% increased tariff on goods coming in from Canada. How do you deal with that in a supply chain overnight, basically? Section 122s, I could keep going on. That is a whole nother webinar about tariffs. But that changing tides of regulatory environment, the operating environment, and then pile on top of it what AI is bringing into our organizations. I think it's really important for us not to put up those rigid walls where we don't have to, and to be agile.
Perfect. And I think agile is a great segue. We've had a litany of different questions from the audience participants now. And now, as lean practitioners and leaders, I need y'all to be agile in our responses to some of these. So, Ryan, I'm actually going to start with you. Based on your experience and where you've been in different industries in which you've touched, could you share some perspective on what the biggest mistakes organizations make when trying to reduce costs while at the same time managing more complex operations?
Great question. I think it honestly starts with not focusing on cost itself. Let cost be a secondary effect. Focus on quality, focus on delivery, focus on pleasing the customer, and you're going to find your business scales a lot more than it had before. If you use lean and you target it specifically at cost, I don't think you're nearly as effective as if you take a first look at the whole value stream and where your deficiencies are, where are your quality and your delivery issues. If you start addressing those, you're going to shed cost. Same thing, by the way, with inventory. A lot of people look at lean and say, oh, good, I'm going to target it at inventory. I think of it the same way. If you focus on your processes and you focus on how things flow through your organization, you're going to naturally shed inventory. And the analogy I'll use is like a runner. If the runner sets out to just lose weight, he or she's not going to be nearly as effective as if setting out to improve how they're running, and then the weight's going to naturally come off. And so I think cost and inventory are more of a byproduct of your current processes, not something that you should target primarily.
I'd really love just to pinpoint one thing that Ryan said, because that is one opening statement that I ask my leadership team a lot is, what does the customer want? Customers don't care how complicated our organization is or how complex it is. They care about pricing, obviously, about responsiveness, quality, speed, those types of things. So bringing it back to the customer, I think, is a really important starting point of how we can impact what we're doing to our customer. You make cuts inside of your organization, then your pricing automatically, you make those lean cuts and your pricing will automatically fall in line. But what other things that we can do to aid our customer responsiveness and the qualities that they care about?
Great. Thank you. And then we had another couple of questions that were similar in a sense. It would appear that, a lot of folks are kind of go and see hands-on to where this activity is taking place at a plant, right? With the evolution and the proliferation of technologies in today's world, as well as remote work and metrics from afar, do you believe that we've lost or really reduced the traditional approach and impact of lean practices and problem solving today? Abhi, I'll start with you.
Oh, you're muted, Abhi.
How about now?
Yeah, it's better.
There's always a delay. So the quick answer is no. And to expand on that, what we try to do at Emotiv at the leadership level and trying to push that down is there's three basic principles we would like leaders. If you have a title of whether it's a CEO to a supervisor, that if you apply these three principles, and it sounds simple, but it's really impactful, and we can spend 30 minutes on each of them. It's one is go to Gemba, meaning go see where the work is happening. And you hear that quite a bit from folks who have lived in a lean organization. The second piece is when you go to Gemba, you ask why. And that ask why just says leaders need to stay curious a little bit longer. And don't tell, learn, teach an organization how to think. The thinkers are not just in the C-suite, the thinkers are everywhere in the company. And then the third piece is, in doing these two, show respect. And I think that's the human aspect of lean. And does that work into the future? I absolutely do, because go to Gemba, go work where the work is happening, ask why, constantly staying curious and using problem-solving methodology. And then the third piece is showing respect to humans so you can build the culture aspect of it. These are a winning formula in any industry you're in. So if lean brings these three, I think it will continue to be latched on for years to come.
One thing to think about though is where to go to Gemba, right? Don't just haphazardly go out to the factory floor or haphazardly go to areas within your organization. It starts first with focus. It starts first with what are the challenges. It starts first with what are we trying to do as an organization, and then that's where you want to disproportionately spend your time. So I think go to Gemba with a purpose, and I think in that sense, it's still extremely relevant. I do agree with in general with the comment about it being a little bit too remote, and I think that might be a symptom of lack of focus. That I've got so many different places to go to Gemba, so I'm just going to do them hybrid, or I'm just going to have phone calls or Zoom calls. I'm not going to actually get out and see the action. I think that is maybe a symptom of a lack of focus.
Well, great. Brian, Abhi, thank you very much. As we kind of approach the 1 o'clock hour, I wanted to give each one of our panelists an opportunity really to leave our audience with one final thought from each of them. If they were to leave with one story, anecdote, tool, experience, what might that be? Mary, I want to kind of kick it over to you to get us started here.
Yeah. Well, just a experience, I guess. I said earlier that I don't think that the future doesn't belong to organizations that the future belongs actually to organizations that are lean enough to be efficient, but resilient enough to absorb the change at the end of the day. I'll give you an example. I mentioned in the intro, we went from contract manufacturing to open a whole new division to become a fulfillment center in a foreign trade zone. And the reason we did that is because we had a global supply chain, many, many miles long. We do a lot of importing from offshore. We manufacture all around the world. And in order to make our operations more efficient, we decided we were going to become our own foreign trade zone. And that actually expanded into a whole nother line of business, which we're really excited about. But we wouldn't have been able to make that change and adapt to those changes if we weren't, like I said, agile. I think that is probably one of the most important things that a company can do is look at their four walls and make sure that they're not just looking inside their four walls, but they're figuring out what's going on in their environment, and they're constantly adapting to those changes.
Ryan?
Yeah, great. I'd say in a word, not to repeat myself, but focus. Focus on the critical few. Figure out what you need to do differently. Figure out what your organization is going to do strategically. Determine what you are and are not going to do, as Mary pointed out earlier. And then make sure you've got the behaviors and the metrics set up to establish where you are today and where you're going. And that is the hardest part. That's what leaders need to do. They need to drive that focus into their organization to get people aligned. Make sure you're engaging the team along the way. Once you figure out where to focus, then make sure the teams and the go to Gembas are all aligned around those principles. It's much easier to say than do, but that is what I would encourage people to do is focus on the critical few.
Thanks, Ryan and Abhi. Let's bring us home.
Delay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go. So I would probably sign off with saying, I think leadership is the most significant element of creating a lean culture. One thing I'll say about Emotiv Mobility, we're in a very early stage of our lean culture. And this is supported all the way from the CEO of the company. And the CEO has led with lean and lean tools, lean culture, lean thinking, problem solving, and every facet, not just manufacturing, but every facet of the organization is going to be the way we're going to transform our company, and we're going to go after the growth that we're aspiring to get over the next 3 years. And that sends a clear message for the whole organization that it starts with leadership. That change, that mindset, that transformation has to be owned by executive level and every single leader below to make sure lean becomes a reality. So wherever you may land or you find yourself in that, it's to say, hey, how is my coaching coming down with regards to the different tools, the different set of tools that I've been given to execute my job, and then how am I applying it to my workload, and then to the people that report within my realm of responsibility. When we have those connections, lean culture does flourish. And this is, my take, but really, when you look at a lot of great organizations, you see that it starts at the top. When you build a culture, it may start in the foundation, but this thinking and methodology and system building starts by an ownership up top.
Amazing. Well, panelists, thank you for your time today. And those that joined virtually, you probably went into this discussion wanting to know a little bit more about where lean breaks, managing complexity without raising costs. And I think we addressed some of those questions. But as you can tell, some of the key themes kept popping up, whether it was how technology functions and operates in the space and the time of lean, leveraging AI, how to harness that for the good, perhaps, and our dynamic work environment. So we had a whole host of different questions that were submitted via email or even in the chat today. We will send those back out as well with a recording of the podcast and a link to our webpage and our landing page that has all of those details, as well as information around our three panelists today. And we look forward to the next opportunity in which we can bring this executive discussion series to you. So with that, thank you all for your time. Have a good one.